Welcome to the fourth and final episode of the Building a 2G GSM Network series. Now, a quick recap of what we've talked about so far. In episode 1, we had a project overview. Episode 2 was SDR basics, or software-defined radios, and how they play a role in this. And then the most recent episode before this was installing and configuring OpenBTS and Asterisk. Those are the softwares that drive the SDR and kind of make this whole project work. Now it's time for the fun part of the series, where I get to show the space station actually in action. Now, I've already shown a brief demo in my Making the First iPhone Usable Again video, but here's kind of a look at what happens under the hood when this station is actually working. So in the last episode, the log was very messy and really hard to kind of keep track of. So what I'm going to do for this episode is actually tail that same log, but I'm going to grep IMSI. That again is that number that's identified by the SIM card of the phone. And by doing this, the only thing that will show up in the log is when these phones actually do something. All those errors are now hidden, and Asterisk is still kind of unhappy about things, but this is still going to at least nail things down just a little bit so it isn't as chaotic. Now I'll go ahead and show you what that looks like in the log when you make a phone call, since phone calls are kind of what you want to do with a phone. The same extensions and phone numbers that we showed before are still relevant here. So 100-1030 still dials this phone. We set that up in the previous episode. And you'll notice on the log, you'll get the call, it starts directing it, it's ringing. As I answer, you'll actually see it answer over here. So you can see the whole process, like one for one of what's happening. And as you hang up, it'll tell it where to go and basically to hang up on that phone. So it's actually kind of cool to be able to watch it behind the scenes and handle each thing one for one. Same thing happens if you dial 611. This is a registered number, but it doesn't actually go anywhere quite yet. So I have it playing a not in service. That's kind of just a, hey, this number's not in service, but call again or dial your number again, whatever message. That Asterisk comes with a lot of these already installed. You just have to tell it where to go. Same thing with just like a random number. If I dial a number that doesn't really exist, it'll say number incorrect. And in a short that I made recently, I kind of showed if you dial ESPRESSO, it'll actually dive into here and play Espresso. And it's the full song by Sabrina Carpenter, by the way, in case you missed that reel. So basically you can make it do whatever you want. You can send things wherever you want. You can make them go wherever you want. And that's all through Asterisk. It's what's routing these IMSIs to the phone numbers that we predefined in the most recent episode before this one. Now we've also talked about with Asterisk making outside calls. I don't have that set up quite yet. But it would be kind of like any other IP phone where you would dial 9 before the like 800-520-1027 or whatever. That's what you would have to do, is that 9 first, and those would do outgoing calls or whatever number you define to kind of let the base station know or let Asterisk know where you want that phone number to go. Texting isn't as exciting in the log. I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like anyway by texting 100-1030. I'll say hello. Hello, close enough. You'll notice over here in the log, it basically just shows up as an SMQ. It says it's from IMSI for SMC, and that's it. I mean, there's nothing really exciting. It doesn't decrypt the message or anything. It just pushes it along as you would expect. If there are issues with SMQ, those will show up in the log as you would expect it to. But yeah, kind of boring actually for text. I would hope that it would show it, but it does not. There is another feature with texting that's a little more complex even for me, but if you text 411 and say status, it will ask OpenBTS what the status is that you're requesting, and it'll send it back in a 1-queued, your IMSI, and then what time and day it thinks it is. So I think if you do state, it does something as well, but I could be wrong. No, so whatever you text it. So it doesn't matter if you say status or state. If you text 411 period, it basically just kind of kicks you back with the where the base station's actually at. This is more of a developer thing, I think. I haven't actually used it, but it's there in case you need it. Now, texting starts to get a little more interesting when you bring in a more modern iPhone. This is an iPhone 6, and you'll notice when it joins, it still sends a text from 101 saying, welcome to the network, as you would expect, but then it starts sending out ghost texts behind the scenes silently. You would never know when a phone like this joins a network what it's actually doing, but it is actually sending a text to a specific number with the term state. Now, this is being captured by OpenBTS. You can see it right here in the log, and it's basically saying it's trying to send it to a number that doesn't exist. And instead, it kicks it back to 101, so you're able to see what it's doing. This phone is panicking. It doesn't know what network it's on. It doesn't know why network it's on. It doesn't know anything about where it is, and it's trying to ask what state it's in, and it's kicking it back to here. And in fact, you'll even see that it's trying to send something that even the phone can't interpret itself. OpenBTS doesn't know what to do with it either. But it's basically trying to figure out why it exists and what state it's actually in. Even more fun on top of that is you can set up OpenBTS to capture that phone number and respond to that state text to tell the phone what state it's in, where it's at, why it's at. I haven't exactly experimented with that quite yet. I think that'd be really fun to do at some point. But this just kind of shows the vast amount of work that you can put into this project to just do some like really neat things that these cell carriers do behind the scenes and actually make it work in your own base station. Now, besides ghost text, we'll go ahead and jump right back over to these older phones because the legacy phones are what most everyone is still kind of interested in. That's calling and that's texting. All that's left is data. I mentioned in the most recent episode that unfortunately GPRS data, I just can't seem to get that dang thing to work. Doesn't seem to matter how much time I've spent on this. You can see it actually shows up as GPRS in the top left corner. That little O is what that stands for next to the 1001. It should be working right now. Everything I've done says that this should work. It even shows up in the log, not with the IMSI filter that I have right now, but in the log, it does show that it's trying to do GPRS. There are errors that it's kicking back. I've tossed those errors into ChatGPT. It's trying to figure it out too, but there's just so little documentation. There's so little actual support for this now that trying to get it working is nearly impossible. Now, if you do really want data to work, GPRS kind of sucks anyway. Edge is the way you want to go. YATE-BTS supports both, and that requires a more expensive SDR. Like we've talked about in previous episodes, though, you get a lot more bang for your buck with that. And if you want to explore that, I've kind of shared DOS Dude 1's video. He did a great deep dive into not only how it works, but setting up the YATE-BTS software with something like the Blade RF instead of the URAN one like I have. That's basically it. It's just kind of a general walkthrough of how this whole thing works and then seeing behind the scenes in the log what it looks like. It's kind of a mess. I've mentioned before that this is like a Frankenstein operation here. It's kind of held together with duct tape and most of it doesn't work, but it does kind of bring back life to these older phones, especially the 2G. The iPhone 2G does not really work at all unless you go out of the country. And it's so funny that I've had people asking me, they're like, well, why don't you just go to a different country if you want to use it so bad? No, I'm not going to do that. I'd rather actually build the station and learn how cell towers work behind the scenes, because that has been really cool, seeing the behind the scenes of like the newer iPhone and seeing how this tries to talk to something that doesn't exist. You'd never see that unless you had your own base station to capture all that. And I've really learned a lot about the behind the scenes of every single aspect of a base station. And I have a lot of, this shouldn't work. And it does work. And everything I've read says that actual cell towers also shouldn't work because of just how complex it all is behind the scenes and the engineers that keep it running and keep it working to the point where it's so seamless that phones are silent and talking to the base station that you'd never know. And yet they're able to figure it out. And it's all able to just kind of work. It really is just a feat of engineering, and I have so much appreciation for all of this, and I wouldn't have that unless I actually like built my own station from scratch, because that's how you actually see how it works and how complicated all of this is behind the scenes. I hope that you enjoyed this rant. I hope that you enjoyed all 4 episodes. This was a really fun series to make, and I had a great time not only continuing to learn about this, because I had to learn more in order to actually show this off and make this work to the best that I could, but it was really fun to kind of share this nerdy experience with you, because I'm really passionate about this clearly, and I hope that even if you're not passionate about it, you found this interesting and entertaining. So thank you so much for watching.